Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Susan James, Library Manager here at Bayless Library and Assistant Director of the Superior District Library. And I have some thank yous and information to pass on. I'd like to thank, of course, Spencer Christensen and his students for coming tonight, and Friends of the Library for the refreshments, and the library's program committee for help with planning. Tonight's program and the one being held this Thursday are part of our Great Michigan Read programming, presented by the Michigan Humanities Council, an affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities and generously funded by Meyer and other sponsors. There are questionnaires that were left on your chairs, and I hope that you will take a few moments after the program and fill them out and leave them in the basket on the table. The 2015-16 Great Michigan Read was selected by librarians and educators throughout the state. And the novel is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. We have extra copies of this if you're interested in reading it. The author will be here on April 5th. Her novel tells the story of the Traveling Symphony, a troupe of Shakespearean actors and musicians traveling the shores of the Great Lakes in a post-apocalyptic Michigan. 99% of the population has died from a flu epidemic. The book's theme of epidemics will be the topic of historian Dee Stevens' talk this Thursday night at 7. She'll speak about myth, medicine, and miasma, northern Michigan in the time of plague. And there's a display in the lobby related to her theme. Tonight's event relates to the book's Shakespeare theme. We're pleased to host Lake Superior State University Assistant Professor of Theater, Spencer Christensen, and his students. He will introduce them to you. Please welcome them tonight.
Hello, everyone. Shakespeare. He's right over there. He's watching us all. My name is Spencer, and I have students with me, and this is Ben Breyer. Yes. This is Ben Eisenman. Yay! This is Susan Kirkman. Yay! And we have, Samantha Holloway. That was a joke. And who's this one? Paige King and Hannah Connor. And they are the brave souls that decided...
Who are you?
Spencer. And they're the brave souls that were interested in taking acting Shakespeare class. And, this was an idea. I've studied Shakespeare a long time and studied in grad school, and we've had this, it was a trial run of the course, and it's been quite exciting. And we've taken a lot of stuff out of the way so we could actually see what's there. So it's pretty exciting. We have all kinds. We've memorized sonnets. We have soliloquies, and we're going to perform some of those for you. But I think to start with, we should talk about a couple things. This book, it's really big. It's called The Folio. And inside it, if you open your blue folder, you'll see copies of some of the pages of this book. It may look like it's not English because of the way it's written. So inside I've made copies of several of these pages of several of the speeches. And you'll see that you might have difficulty reading it because it looks so different. The spelling of words is odd. Punctuation is different. Letters are capitalized. And there's a whole system by which this works. And a lot of actors will only, if they get cast in a play that's Shakespeare, they'll go straight to their folio and they'll make note of all these things that you see on the copies I made you. So, for example, if you see a semicolon in a speech, what does that mean? Reflection, or
supernatural occurrences,
or
shift in mood.
A shift, right? So when we see a semicolon, there's this shift that should happen. The punctuation in the folio that Shakespeare gave us was sort of like the stage direction that you may not, because there is no stage direction in Shakespeare. But it's hidden in the punctuation and how the script is laid out in this book. So when you see a capital letter in the folio, what should you do? If a word is capitalized in the middle of the verse,
That's an important word.
it's an important word, and what should you do with it?
Play with them to see how they change their thinking.
Yes, right. Because I gave you a list of it says stress and meaning in Shakespeare, and you can see that there is a way of doing this that you approach it with. So if you see a comma, what should you do?
Not much.
Not much. You should keep going a lot. We see commas and we pause. And we typically say Shakespeare a little bit too slow, and we take a lot of pauses and we breathe too much, and we just need to keep it moving forward. And so sometimes we see a comma and we think we should take a breath or pause. Not in the folio and not in Shakespeare. If you see a colon, what do you do?
Keep going.
Propel.
Roll for it.
Propel. We like to use the word pulse forward. So if you see a colon, that means there's a new energy or new life that comes to play in that line. It's like a new thought, or it's an energized movement forward. And that's what we do when we see a colon. If a word is spelled strangely, if it's not, you read it and you're like, well, that's not how that word is spelled. It also means you should treat it with some sort of special, it should get a special treatment. It should cause you to think about, why is it that way? Now, the reason I bring it up is because if you go to, you may have some of these in the library, you get an edited version of Shakespeare. You buy a book and it's got the play in it. The editors have got rid of all of this. They've put a comma where they think what's grammatically correct today. They've changed a semicolon to a colon, or a comma to a period, these things, and it ruins the original intent of the play. And so these are all the kinds of things that we have done to try and make sure that we know what we're doing. When you see a period, what should you do?
Drive to that period.
Drive to it. You drive to it and land on it. So when a period, it's called an end stop or a full stop, you go, 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 and make a statement and land. So there's all kinds of like fun stuff to just check out in there. You've got set speeches or soliloquies to look at, and some sonnets as well. I've got more copies of other stuff so that you can see some stuff. So to do Shakespeare, we have to have our mouth going and like our whole body. So we do these, I've got little there's like word teasers in there and little things, but we also need a lot of breath. So we do things like one hen.
One hen.
One hen, two ducks.
One hen, two ducks.
One hen, two ducks, three squawking geese.
One hen, two ducks, three squawking geese.
One hen, two ducks, three squawking geese, four Limerick oysters.
One hen, two ducks, three squawking geese, four Limerick oysters.
One hen, two ducks, three squawking geese, four Limerick oysters, five corpulent porpoises.
One hen, two ducks, three squawking geese, four Limerick oysters, five corpulent porpoises.
One hen, two ducks, three squawking geese, four Limerick oysters, five corpulent porpoises, six pairs of Donald Versals tweezers.
One hen, two ducks, three squawking geese, four Limerick oysters, five corpulent porpoises, six pairs of Donald Versals tweezers.
Right, and we use this to train our mouth and our breath. And that, if you see that poem in there, it goes to 10. And we try to do that entire thing on one breath. Because sometimes Shakespeare will give you a passage where he doesn't allow you to take one. And you're like, come on, hey, come on, Shakespeare. So you have to have great control of your ability to speak the language and not overwork. We were just doing some prep before we came over, and we were just talking about this. Like, if you go running for the first time and you haven't run in maybe a couple weeks or maybe a month or maybe 6 months, who knows? You work too hard. And it's the same thing when an actor hasn't touched Shakespeare for a while. We overwork it. We're like, oh, I gotta do a lot of work here. And we don't do it with ease or simpleness. So we were doing that exercise we just did, and everybody was like, one hen, two ducks, everybody was just, getting all tense, and then, we just talked about it. Like, we talk about in all acting that tension is the enemy of creativity, and if we're tense and tight, you cannot speak Shakespeare. You'll get all caught up in your words. So we do something like that, and then there's give me the gift of a grip top sock. We should take a look at that. Yeah? Give me the gift. So this is another tongue twister that we do. Okay. And it goes, give me the gift of a grip-top sock.
Give me the gift of a grip-top sock.
A drip-drape, ship-shape, tip-top sock.
A drip-drape, ship-shape, tip-top sock.
Not your spin-slick, slapstick, slip-slop stock.
Not your spin, slip, slapstick, slip, slop, stop.
But a plastic, elastic, grip-top sock.
But a plastic, elastic, grip-top sock.
And what's amazing about Shakespeare is that, most of it is in verse or poetry. And so there's all these sounds that are the same, just like you're looking at here. And we have to be able to get all of them in. So there's a lot of alliteration. Does anyone know what alliteration is? Sarah Maurer?
I can't remember if it's consonants or, is it consonants?
Yes.
Okay, or vowels.
Yeah, alliteration is all those sounds that have vowels that are the same, consonants are the same. Assonance is the vowels. And so we look for all of those in the speeches so that they tell us things. If we use them, it'll help us say the speech. So I also like to make sure that we connect it to rhythm. There's this Broadway musical called Hamilton. I don't know if you've heard about it, but I love it because they're aggressively using rhyme and poetry in a way that we haven't heard before, and that's what Shakespeare's doing. And if we use it to our benefit, it can actually be exciting, right? So we sometimes like to give this a little bit more. What would we say? Pizzazz. Give me the gift of the grip-top sock.
Give me the gift of a grip-top sock.
A drip-drape, ship-shape, tip-top sock.
A drip-drape, ship-shape, tip-top sock.
Not your spin-slick, slapstick, slip-stop stock.
Not your spin-slick, slapstick, slip-stop stock.
But a plastic, elastic, grip-top sock.
But a plastic, elastic, grip-top sock.
Because there's like this innate rhythm, you can hear it, right? And if we buy into the rhythm, in the verse of Shakespeare is called Iambic Pentameter. I'm sure you've heard of it. What's an iamb?
A foot.
A foot! Yes, and what's it? It's called, an iamb is unstressed, stressed. So it's a form of meter. An iambic pentameter means there's 5 meters, or 5 feet, in the line, meaning there's how many syllables? 10. So most of the time, a verse line in Shakespeare is going to have 10 syllables. There's going to be 5 feet, and they're going to be unstressed, stressed. So, to households both alike in dignity. You've heard all kinds of these, right? Or what's the first line of your sonnet, Ben?
As fast as thou shalt wane, so fast thou growst.
And really highlight the iambic pentameter.
As fast as thou shalt wane, so fast thou growst.
That's right. And so it sounds like does anybody remember this, what this sounds like? A heartbeat. Da-dum, 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 da-dum. And early on, you should buy into the rhythm. You should fully explore it. You should over-exaggerate it. Can you do the first line of yours?
How oft when thou my music playest.
Yeah, you can hear it. Can you do the first line of yours?
No longer mourn for me when I am dead.
That's beautiful.
Mine is different, but
Yeah, go ahead.
if the dull substance of my flesh were,
That's awesome. But do it wrong. Do it like you were just doing.
If the dull substance of my flesh were.
Right, and sometimes you notice that it's different. And I gave you also a handout in there about the different meters. Sometimes it's stressed, unstressed, or stressed, stressed, unstressed. And they each have a name in poetry and how you do meter. But if you think of, 'twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house, that's unstressed, unstressed, stressed. And it's just natural. You hear it. You've been doing it since as long as if you've ever read that story to anyone in your family. But that one, it doesn't work. And it should tell the actor that something's up, right? It's different. Can you do the first line of yours?
My mistress eyes are nothing like the sun.
Mm-hmm.
That time of year thou mayst in me behold.
Oh, yeah. Now the sonnets, they just did the first verse line of the sonnets we've been looking at. Sonnets are most often perfect iambic pentameter. They'll do the exact thing you expect them to do, 10 syllables per line. Does anybody know how many lines a sonnet has? They all have the exact same number of lines. It's 14. Oh, you were cute. That's good. And they have a rhyming pattern. Does anybody know the rhyming pattern? So there's, tell us what you know.
What I know about
Yes.
the rhyming
Yeah.
pattern? Well, there's 3 quatrains
Mhm.
followed by a couplet.
And so what's a quatrain?
A quatrain is a series of 4 lines that typically goes A, B, and then
Meaning?
the second,
What's-
meaning that the last words will rhyme in the sentences. So the A's will rhyme together and the B's will rhyme together. So it's A, B. The second quatrain is C, D. The third is E, F. And then the couplet is 2 lines that rhyme at the end, so that's G.
Yeah. Who has a perfect rhyming couplet? Do all of you?
Probably.
Some of us don't. What's yours? What's the end of yours?
The couplet?
Yeah. I know it's hard to get to it. Do you have you?
You saw a couplet?
Yeah.
I haven't.
No.
For sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds, lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds.
Yes. And a lot of Shakespeare, if a character in Shakespeare, if a soliloquy ends in a couplet, they have made a decision. They come to a conclusion. Most of the time, a soliloquy or a set speech is a character working through a problem. They're in search of something. And if it ends in a couplet, say that again?
For sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds, lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds.
Lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds. They've come to a conclusion. They're searching out a problem. A lot of the sonnets do the same thing. They're proposing something and it gets searched out and it ends with some sort of couplet. Did you think of yours?
Yes.
Go with it.
All this the world well knows, yet none knows well, to shun the heaven that leads men to this hell.
Oh, that's dark. Great. So why don't we share some of the sonnets? Let's interject some of that. Why don't you give us a sonnet, Ben Breyer?
I will start with the one I gave an example.
Great.
As fast as thou shalt wane, so fast thou growst, in one of thine from that which thou departest. And that fresh blood which youngly thou bestowest, thou mayst call thine when thou from youth convertest. Herein lives wisdom, beauty, and increase. Without this, folly, age, and cold decay. If all were minded so, the time should cease, and 60 years would make the world away. Let those whom nature hath not made for store, harsh, featureless, and rude, barrenly perish. Look whom she best endowed, she gave them more. Which bounteous gift shouldst in bounty cherish. She carved thee for her seal, and meant thereby thou shouldst print more. Now let that copy die.
Oh, Ben Breyer, nicely done. Here, pass those down. So I'm going to give you his speech that he just said so that you can see it on paper. And he's going to do it one more time. So he got that out, right? And the whole idea when we do this is to know, when we talk about acting Shakespeare, I want my actor to know who they're talking to, right?
Right.
And in this speech, he's talking to
Talking to a woman that I want to have children with.
Yes, that is correct.
Very nice.
Yes.
Not okay.
And to think that, when they all, showed up with you good. So I was like, and Susan was like, we've got this Shakespeare guy, he's on a pedestal, right? And I think we sometimes think that Shakespeare does, like, oh, it's so, up here and elitist, but actually Shakespeare talks about a lot of very base things quite frequently, all over the place. And all of his sonnets usually deal with love, death, revenge, time. Like these big concepts. So you got it now in front of you. Give it another go, Ben Breyer.
As fast as thou shalt wane, so fast thou growst, and one of thine from that which thou departest. And that fresh blood which youngly thou bestowest, thou mayst call thine when thou from youth convertest. Herein lives wisdom, beauty, and increase. Without this, folly, age, and cold decay. If all were minded so, the time should cease, and 60 years would make the world away. Let those whom nature hath not made for store, harsh, featureless, and rude, barrenly perish. Look whom she gave the more, which bounties give, goods and bounty cherish. She carved thee for a seal, and meant thereby thou shouldst print more. Now let that copy die.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. Great. So you can. Does that make sense? So we were talking about something that Shakespeare uses a lot earlier when we were meeting this afternoon, called antithesis. And there's a great example of it in the speech we just did. And the line is, "Herein lives wisdom, beauty, and increase." And then it gets juxtaposed against, "Without this folly, age, and cold decay." So Shakespeare often will set up two things for you to compare, and they're often opposite. And we like to say that antithesis really resembles the world because nothing really is that simple, as either this or that. We're always somewhere in between. Ben, choose one. Which one is it?
How oft?
How oft? Let me pass that out.
Okay.
This is a beautiful sonnet.
Do you remember what number this is, Ben?
Me neither.
They're right after. It's like 167, 168 or something. They're right after each other.
Okay, now they have the words right in front of them. You can't mess up.
I'll try my best. It's okay. I messed up.
Go ahead.
How oft when thou my music plays upon that blessed wood whose motion sounds, with thy sweet fingers when thou gently swayest the wiry concord that mine ear confounds. Do I envy those jacks who nimble leap to kiss the tender inward of thy hand, whilst my poor lips that should the harvest reap at the wood's boldness be thy blushing stand? To be so tickled they would change their state and situation with those dancing chips, or whom thy fingers walk with gentle gait, making dead wood more blessed than living lips. Since saucy jacks so humble are in this, give them thy fingers, me, thy lips to kiss.
I think that could woo. I love that. Yeah. So do you know what that means? Do you know what he said? Those jacks that nimble leap.
Basically, I am looking at this woman I'm completely in love with, and she has male suitors all around her. She's a musician, she's playing a piano, and the jacks are the suitors around her who are trying to vie for her attention while I'm back here just watching from afar.
Mm-hmm. And then, so the thing that is really exciting, some people think it is, some people don't, there's these things called lexicons. And this is A through M and N through Z. And you have to look up all these words because they're so different today than they were when they were written. And so they all thoroughly enjoy looking up every single word that there is. But when any actor does a Shakespearean play, if they don't do this homework, you just don't know. You don't know what you're saying. You don't know what a saucy jack is until you've looked it up, because those words do not mean the same thing as they do today. Go ahead.
Dancing chips is literally the piano keys that she's playing.
Mm-hmm.
Did they have pianos?
A type of, it's not like I think we do today, but it's a musical instrument, yeah. So there is, looking all this up is crucial to understanding the piece. Even the smallest word, you think you know what it is.
The actors have taken so much energy to look it all up. What about us poor audience who has no clue? How does that work?
It's so much. There's a lot of work that a Shakespearean actor has to do, and in staging the piece specifically, we have to tell the story physically, and we have to be so clear in our intention, so clear that you get it, right? We have to be the thing I love about Shakespeare, if you can learn how to act Shakespeare, you can act in any play, because everything is heightened, because it's such powerful language, and it's full of images, and if we don't really know what we're doing, you won't understand it at all. So we have to be doubly good to make sure you get it. Luckily, we've been doing these plays for so long. I think the plays that are hardest to get is when you haven't ever heard of it, right? Like Pericles. Has anybody seen Pericles? It's one of the strangest plays that Shakespeare wrote, but nobody has a clue what's going on. Not only does it just, you're like, what is happening in this play? You've probably never even heard the story.
Was it one of the ones that he did after King James was in power? And he was,
Pericles was probably one of his last.
so he was working for James.
So you see all this stuff, but there's a play called Titus Andronicus, the lamentable tragedy of Titus Andronicus. Susan will do a piece for you here in a moment. Do you all know this piece, Titus Andronicus? It's one of the bloodiest Shakespeare plays. It is the bloodiest Shakespeare play. It is bloody. And it's no joke. It is just, the play's about revenge. It starts with war. Titus comes back from war and says, I've defeated the Goths. Susan is playing one of the Goths here in a soliloquy. The queen, in fact. And she begs, she's a prisoner, and she begs Titus not to kill her son. And he's like, no, I have to, because that's what we do. And he kills her son. At that moment, she decides that she will get him back, which she starts that journey towards. Then he goes back to her, and it's this back and forth. You may know Titus Andronicus because one of the characters in it has both hands cut off, have you ever seen this one? And her tongue cut out. And you see her like that the whole play. The whole play. So she's just walking around, literally doesn't speak, and has no hands. And she's in every scene until the very end. And there's a lot of that. And there's much more. There's a lot to that play. Tamra is the character who's the queen of the Goths. She's found in a clearing by the Emperor of Rome's brother and his wife, Lavinia, who gets her hands cut off. And they're like, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. You're with another person, and you should be with you should be somewhere else. And she launches into a lie.
Have I not reason, think you, to look pale? These two have ticed me hither to this place, a barren, detested vale, you see it is. The trees, though summer, yet forlorn and lean, o'ercome with moss and baleful mistletoe. Here the sun never shines, here nothing breathes, unless the nightly owl or fatal raven. And upon showing me this abhorred pit, they told me here, at dead time of the night, 1,000 fiends, 1,000 hissing snake, 10,000 swelling toads, and many urchins would make such fearful and confused cries as any mortal body hearing it should straight fall mad or else die suddenly. No sooner had they told this hellish tale, but straight told me they would bind me unto the body of a dismal ewe and leave me to this miserable death. And then they called me foul adulteress, lascivious Goth, and all the other terms that ever ear did hear to such effect. And then, by wondrous fortune come, you came. This vengeance had on me they executed. Revenge it, as you love your mother's life, or be ye not henceforth called my children.
Great. So that speech is in your blue folder as well. It starts with, you can see it, that's what it looks like. It's in there, have I not reason, think you to look pale. It is, she's talking to her two sons who just showed up and are like, Mom, what are you doing here? And she's like, these people are trying to hurt me, right? And Susan and I were working on that on Sunday. The thing that I don't, you clearly had a couple of things go awry, but boy, man, in a play that's not Shakespeare, you can fuddle through. But when it's so frustrating when you go up in Shakespeare, meaning you can't think of the next thing, because it's in verse. And some actors have done it for so long that they can ad-lib in verse and they can cover their tracks like you can do in any play. But boy, is it tough to do. I thought you did pretty well there. Because you get off that rhythm. Nicely done. Would you like to do a piece, Sam? Which one would you like to do?
Does it matter?
No.
Okay. Then I'll just pick one.
Okay.
Okay. If the dull substance of my flesh were thought, injurious distance should not stop my way, for then, in spite of space, I would be brought from limits far remote where thou dost stay. No matter then, although my foot did stand on limits far removed from thee, for nimble thought can jump both sea and land, as soon as think the place where he would be. But thought kills me that I am not thought, to leap large lengths of miles when thou art gone. But so much of earth and water wrought, I must attend time's leisure with my moan, receiving naught from elements so slow, but heavy tears, badges of either's woe.
Does anybody know what she was saying? Did you get an essence of it? No? Go a little slower.
If the dull substance of my flesh were thought, injurious distance should not stop my way, for then in spite of space I would be brought to limits far remote where thou dost stay.
Pause. Are you with her? You think so? Give it to her one more time and slow it down just a little bit more.
If the dull substance of my flesh were thought, injurious distance should not stop my way, for then in spite of space I would be brought to limits far remote where thou dost stay.
You with us now? Where does she want to be where she is?
No.
She wants to be where?
Where he is.
Yeah, right, keep going.
No matter then, although my foot did stand on limits far removed from thee, for nimble thought can jump both sea and land, as soon as think the place where he would be. But thought kills me that I am not thought, to leap large lengths of miles when thou art gone, but that so much of earth and water wrought, I must attend time's leisure with my moan, receiving naught from elements so slow, but heavy tears, badges of either's woe.
He's dead.
Oh,
That's a good one.
yeah, could be. Yeah, but she misses him, right? So on this piece, when we worked on it, the idea, in terms of acting Shakespeare, there's a thing called fueling thought. And when we're speaking such beautiful language, sometimes we can just get caught up in it and forget our intention, like you were bringing up. Like, how do we know what you're saying? The clarity for Sam is that she misses him. And she's got to keep that going. She's got to keep that in her mind. I miss you. And can you give an example of what that would be like?
Like the exercise?
Yes.
If the dull substance of my flesh were thought, I miss you. Injurious distance should not stop my way. I miss you. For then, in spite of space, I miss you. I would be brought, I miss you, to limits far remote where thou dost stay. I miss you.
Right, so sometimes we can capture the essence of the sonnet in 3 words, right? And then the actor feeds it in. And then when they feel like they're there, they can get rid of the thought and just say the words. Nicely done. What would you like to do?
What do you want?
Pick your fave, I don't know.
Do you want a sonnet or a soliloquy?
Why don't you do that? Why don't you do Measure for Measure, right? Isabel.
Okay.
So do you know Measure for Measure, that story? It's pretty weird. now that the children are gone, we can tell us all. So Lavinia, just so you know, Lavinia's tongue gets cut out. Remember we were talking about her and her hands chopped off? And then she's raped in that forest, and then her father kills her in the end of the play because of the shame of it. And then her father also kills those 2 boys that did it to her, bakes them into a pie, and feeds it to their mother. I mean, that's what Titus Andronicus is. It's so dark. And so base, right? And that Tamara eats her children.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow is right. No, but she's eating.
Yeah.
And you see Titus just watching. And then Titus asks the emperor, who's eating with Tamara, they're like gonna parlay and maybe not fight anymore. And he says, there's a story he references about if your daughter is raped, should you kill her because of the shame? And the emperor says, of course you should. So he goes, Lavinia, stand up, stabs her. And that's how, and so everybody's like, what's going on? And then it unfolds from there, and then everybody just starts killing everybody. And that's how that play ends, with a lot of... The recent revival of Titus Andronicus made people throw up in the audience. It was so bloody. Yeah, it's pretty intense. Where were we at? Measure for measure. I just had to tell you the rest of that. I didn't want to say that while your children were here. So Measure for Measure is also, it's got a little bit of, it's a little dark. Measure for Measure has a character named Isabel, and she's a nun, and it's got this really, so the Duke decides to leave town. He's like, Angelo, take over for me. But the Duke doesn't leave. He dresses as a friar and starts sneaking around to see what's really going on. But he doesn't interfere until the very end of the play. He lets things go on and on and on. But Angelo pretends as if he's a very straight-laced, good man. But he's not. And Isabel's brother has broken a law that you can't be messing around with ladies, and he's sentenced to death. And she comes to Angelo and she says, Angelo, please don't kill my brother. And Angelo looks at her and he says this soliloquy. He says, who will believe thee? He says this. He says, if you sleep with me, I'll save your brother's life. But she's a nun. And she's like, I'm going to tell everybody you just said that. And he says this, who will believe thee, Isabel? My unsoiled name, the austereness of my life, my vouch against you, and my place in the state will sow your accusation o'er a way that you shall stifle in your own report and smell of calumny. Right? And so he goes through this speech, and then she responds.
To whom should I complain? Did I tell this, who would believe me? Oh, perilous mouths that bear in them one and the self-same tongue, either of condemnation or of proof, bidding the law make curtsy to their will, hooking both right and wrong to the appetite to follow as it draws. I'll to my brother. Though he hath fallen by prompture of the blood, yet hath he in him such a mind of honor that, had he 20 heads to tender down on 20 bloody blocks, he'd yield them up before his sister should her body stoop to such abhorred pollution. Then Isabel live chaste, and brother die. More than our brother is our chastity. I'll tell him yet of Angelo's request, and fit his mind to death for his soul's rest.
So she says, well, my brother's going to die. So she goes to her brother, and Claudio's like, she tells him, and Claudio's like, well, could you? And she is so true and honest to who she is that she's furious. What are some of those words she calls him? She calls him a coward. And she's like, I can't believe you would ask me to do that. You know. And he's like, but I'm going to die. But the Duke saves the day in the end. He's like, just kidding, I was here all the time. And pardon, Angelo, bad boy. And Angelo gets married in the end of the play. It's such a weird play. Then we have Hannah's. You want to do Rosalind?
Yeah, I can do that.
So do you know Love's Labor's Lost? It's one of it's based. Here's the story of Love's Labor's Lost. There's 4 boys who build a treehouse, and they put a sign up that says "No girls allowed." It's the basic story. And these 4 boys are like, they make a decree, and they say, we will study, we won't eat, we won't sleep for several years, and we won't talk to a single woman. And then one of them goes, oh wait, the princess is coming to deal with that land issue that we have. And they're like, oh well, let's talk to him. So they do, and Rosalind is one of the characters. Every actress wants to play this character. This is one of those famous roles in Shakespeare for women, and she's paired up with Barone. Barone is one of the most witty, smartest characters that Shakespeare ever wrote, and he's in love with Rosalind, and they're like, will you please marry us? And the 4 women say to the 4 boys, if you wait a year and still love us, you can marry us. It's like such a great answer. That's how the play ends. And Rosalind says this to Barone.
Oft I have heard of you, my lord Barone, before I saw you.
And the world's large tongue proclaims you a man replete with mocks, full of comparison and wounding flouts, which you on all estates will execute that lie within the mercy of your wit. To weed this wormwood from your fruitful brain, and therewithal to win me, if you please, without which I am not to be won, you shall this 12-month term from day to day visit the speechless sick and still converse with groaning wretches, and your task shall be, with all the fierce endeavor of your wit, to enforce the pained impotent to smile.
Yeah, so she says, you go to a place where people are sick and dying and hungry, and you use your wit for good. Do it for a year. And he literally is like, what? His answer is like, come on. She's like, no, if you want to marry me, that's what you'll do. And he's like, okay. It's literally what all the boys are like, fine. It's one of these fun, a lot of colleges are bringing it back because you can do 4 women, 4 boys, and it's got this fun little sort of repartee back and forth between all of them, and it's a fun comedy. Yeah. What's a piece that you really love that you haven't done yet up here? You've all got more.
Yeah.
You want to do that other? What do you want to do?
Thou Nature.
Oh yeah, so you know King Lear?
Oh, yeah.
King Lear, right? So there's Edmund, who is the most famous bastard in all of Shakespeare. Bastard meaning his father compounded with his mother under the dragon's tail. Do you know this line from Shakespeare? Literally, King Lear starts with this conversation. Here's Edmund. Here's Gloucester, his father. And an advisor comes up and he's like, oh, you know my son, Edmund? I had a great time with a prostitute. That's how he showed up. That is exactly what gets said at the beginning of this play. And Edmund's like, really? And so he's a bastard. He had, and his brother is legitimate. He has a brother named Edgar, who's legitimate, and will get all the land and all the money just because his father did this. And his father talks about it openly in front of him. So Edmund is plotting revenge.
Thou, Nature, art my goddess. To thy law my services are bound. Wherefore should I stand in the plague of custom to permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me, for that I am some 12 or 14 moonshines lag of a brother? Why bastard? Wherefore base? If my dimensions are as well compact, my mind as generous, and my shape as true as honest madam's issue, why label us as base, as baseness, bastard, base, base? Who in the lusty stealth of nature take more composition and fierce gratitude, then doth within a stale, dull, tired bed go to the creating a whole tribe of fops, got tween a sleep and wake. Well, legitimate Edgar, I will have your land. Our father's loves to the bastard Edmund, as to the legitimate. Fine word, legitimate. Well, my legitimate, if this letter speed and my invention thrive, then Edmund the base shall top the legitimate. I grow, I prosper. Now, gods, stand up for bastards.
So, great. So, here comes Gloucester. His dad's like, and Edmund's like, Dad, you don't want to see this letter. And Gloucester, of course, says, what's that letter? And he's forged it. And there's a lot of forging in Shakespeare. Once you get a few of the same stories, they start popping up all over the place. And he's basically said that Edgar has, he wants to kill his dad so he can get his money quicker. So Gloucester loses his mind right then and there, and banishes Edgar and says, if I get my hands on him, I'm going to kill him. So Edmund tells Edgar that, and Edgar goes running and hides in the forest for a long time, for the whole play basically. And Gloucester believes this whole lie that his son, his illegitimate son, has given him. Do you know what happens to Gloucester in the play, in King Lear? Would you like to know? Gets his eyes plucked out on stage. And it's some people do it with like a spoon. They get right in there and they like make it so graphic. And so then the rest of the play, Gloucester's walking around the heath in England with blood coming out of his eyes. And he has one of my favorite lines in all of Shakespeare. He says, he's talking to a character on stage, can't think of who it is, but the line is, I want no eyes, I stumbled when I saw. Right? And it's such a beautiful line. It's, to me, King Lear should keep getting told and told and told, because sometimes we just can't see what's right in front of us. It's so clear he's lying, but he loses his mind and goes crazy and he pays the price, right? But he can't see until he has no eyes. And that's one of the themes of King Lear. Anybody else got what's one of you?
I got Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet.
You want to do the famous one? But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? You want to hear that one? You want to cheer?
A wall.
Yeah, this is a wall. Can you imagine with us? You're welcome.
I don't know if the camera can see.
Get on camera, bro. That's Juliet. She's right there.
But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off! It is my lady. Oh, it is my love. Oh, that she knew she were. She speaks, yet she says nothing. What of that? Her eye discourses. I will answer it. 'Tis not to me she speaks. I am too bold. Two of the fairest stars in all the heaven, having some business, do entreat her eyes to twinkle in their spheres till they return. What if her eyes were there in her head? The brightness of her cheeks would stream so bright that it would shame those stars as daylight doth the lamp. Her eye in heaven would stream so bright through heaven that birds would sing and think it were not night. Look how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek.
What else do we have? We got something.
Sure.
What have you done a sonnet?
No.
You want to do My Mistress Eyes?
Do you want me to?
Yeah. You may have heard this. You may have heard this one. This one is more commonly known.
My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfume there is more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love is rare as any she belied with false compare.
So we know what that's about? You get that one, I think? Yeah? In acting Shakespeare, we talk about that you've got to know your circumstance, that you need a partner, you've got to be speaking to someone, because in a play I don't speak unless I need to. So they've got to have a reason, and they have to be performing an action. So they got to know where they're at, who they're talking to, and they got to be performing an action. So you want to talk about what we talked about for this?
Yeah. Basically our scenario is that I have walked into a room and there is a group of people who have just been talking about my mistress and how ugly she is and how gross she is and how they hate her and she's just awful. And so instead of saying, no, that's mean, don't do that, I say, you know what, you're right. She's ugly and she's gross, but I love her.
Yeah. So she agrees, right? Anybody else got one they want to do? What do you have?
No longer mourn for me, or
Oh,
let
that's a
me.
beautiful piece.
Okay.
That's beautiful. Let's do that one. This is another sonnet.
No longer mourn for me when I am dead. Then you shall hear the surly sullen bell give warning to the world that I am fled from this vile world with vilest worms do dwell. Oh, if you look upon this line, remember not the hand that writ it, that for I love you so, that I and your sweet thoughts should be forgot, if thinking on me then should make you woe. Oh, if I say, you look upon this verse, when I perhaps compounded am with clay, do not so much as my poor name rehearse, but let your love, even with my life decay, lest the wise world should look into your moan and mock you with me after I am gone.
What's that about, Susan?
It's about how if somebody loves you so much that thinking about you makes them upset after you've passed, that they should just forget about you entirely because you'd rather see this person that you once loved happy than sad.
Anybody else got one they want to do?
Yeah.
I want you to do all of them. I want you to want to. So do you have one you want to do?
I could do that time of year.
Oh yeah, that's pretty, yeah. This is a sonnet that you may have heard.
That time of year thou mayest in me behold, when yellow leaves, or none, or few do hang upon the boughs which shake against the cold. Bare ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such a day, as after the sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away. Death's second self, which seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire, whereon the ashes of his youth doth lie, that on the deathbed must expire, consumed which that it was nourished by. This thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well which thou must leave ere long.
So what's the circumstance of that piece?
We came up with that I am dying, and I am trying to comfort my child in telling them that I'll always love you, and even though you see that light is fading in me because I am almost gone, if you remember what I was and remember how much I love you, I'll always be with you.
Right, and that makes sense, because what's the first line?
That time of year thou mayest in me behold, when yellow leaves, or none, or few do hang upon the boughs which shake against the cold. Bare ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang.
Right. So that makes sense, right? You can hear that idea that this person is at the end of their life talking to someone. And it's got to matter to the actor. There's got to be a reason. Anybody else?
I'll do one.
Okay, what are you going to do?
My soliloquy.
Oh, which one?
But I do think it's their husband.
Oh, great, yeah.
But I do think it is their husband's fault if wives do fall. Say that they slack their duties and pour our treasures into foreign laps, or else break out in peevish jealousies, or say they strike us, or scant our former having in despite. Why, we have gulls, and though we have some grace, yet we have some revenge. Let husbands know their wives have sense like them. They see and smell and have their palates both for sweet and sour, as husbands have. What is it that they do when they change us for others? Is it sport? I think it is. And doth affection breed it? I think it doth. Is it frailty that thus errs? It is so too. And have not we affections, desires for sport and frailty, as men have? Then let them use us well, else let them know. The ills we do, their ills instruct us so.
Yeah, girl. So that's from a play called Othello. Do you know Othello? And that's Amelia talking to Desdemona.
Just having some boy trouble.
Yeah, her husband, Othello, believes that she has cheated on him because Iago has told her as such and created a whole web of lies to make him believe it. So much that he does attack Desdemona in the end of the play and kill her by smothering her with a pillow. Yeah, right? Shakespeare, y'all. What's up, guy? So, you got anybody else have one?
I could do Devouring Time.
Okay, yeah. This is a sonnet about time.
Devouring time, blunt thou the lion's paws, and make the earth devour her own sweet brood. Pluck the keen teeth from the fierce tiger's jaws, and burn the long-lived phoenix in her blood. Make glad and sorry seasons as thou fleet'st, and do whate'er thou wilt, swift-footed time, to the wide world in all her fading sweets. But I do forbid thee one most heinous crime. O carve not with thy hours my love's fair brow, nor draw no lines there with thine antique pen. Him in thy course untainted do allow, to beauty's pattern for succeeding men. Yet do thy worst, old time, despite thy wrong. My love shall in my verse ever live young.
Shakespeare loved to write about time. He's always like, time, don't take away my beauty. Don't take away the beauty of my love. And then there's always this thing where he's like, well, if I write it down, you can never take that. And what I think is so amazing is that 400 years later, he was right. I mean, what's the couplet?
Yet do thy worst, old time, despite thy wrong. My love shall in my verse ever live young.
I mean, it's pretty cool. There's a lot of his writing that says, you know what, do what you want, because I wrote this verse and it will it will live on. And I think it's really interesting that it has. This is the 400th anniversary. There's the folio, the original folio is on tour around the United States right now. And you can follow it and see where it's at. And there's all this Shakespeare celebration going on because of the anniversary. In your folder, there's Sonnet 83. Maybe you can see that. This is my favorite sonnet. I'm going to speak it. The thing I love about the 6 people in front of you, our 7th actor could not come, is that they don't speak, they're using their own voice, right? That's Ben's voice, that's Ben's voice. You don't hear this affected sound like you may sometimes hear, like you don't hear an affected British or anything like that, which shouldn't happen, right? Unless you were British, right? Unless you go to England and see a play. But the crucial part is to not speak this like, I never saw that you did paint in me. There's no reason for that. The actor has to use their own voice because it has to belong to them. So you're looking at Sonnet 83? So I'm going to do Sonnet 83. This is my favorite one. And I imagine that the woman I'm speaking to has started to leave the room. Will you leave the room for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, be mad at me. I never saw that you did painting need. And therefore to your fair no painting set. I found, or thought I found, you did exceed the barren tender of a poet's debt. And therefore have I slept in your report, that you, yourself being extant, well might show how far a modern quill doth come too short. Speaking of worth, what worth in you doth grow. This silence for my sin you did impute, which shall be most my glory being dumb. For I impair not beauty being mute, when others would give life and bring a tomb. There lives more beauty in one of your fair eyes than both your poets can in praise devise. This one, you can see the antithesis, which shall be most my glory. Let's see. Where he sets up one thing, and therefore have I slept in your... How he sets up one thing against another. There lives more life in one of your fair eyes than both your poets can in praise devise. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. How much do you want to hear anything else? You loving it? We have more. Does somebody have another one?
Yeah.
Do you want me to do Expensive Spirit, or would you rather me do my other soliloquy?
Spirit.
Well, Ben picked a sonnet that, sometimes you pick a sonnet and you're like, I don't know what this really says. And then you find out what it really says. And you're like, oh, okay. So it's about
Sex.
Yeah. And he was like, should I do that one? If you want to, what's the other soliloquy?
Friends, Romans, countrymen.
Do you know this one?
About 97%. I feel comfortable doing it. I might mess up on a line or two, though.
Okay.
I feel comfortable doing it.
Do I have a copy of it?
I have a copy of it.
Okay. I can feed you a line if you need it. Do you know this? This is pretty famous. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. You did this in high school. Sarah Maurer. Everybody. The best. All right. Give it a go, Ben.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ear. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. So too, let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you that Caesar was ambitious. And if it were so, it was a grievous fault. And Caesar has grievously answered it.
Here under leave
of Brutus and the rest. For Brutus is an honorable man, so are they all honorable men. Come I to speak in Caesar's view. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Was in this Caesar ambitious? When the poor hath cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? But Brutus says he was ambitious, and sure, he is an honorable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin there with Caesar, and I must pause till it come back to me.
Not bad. Anybody else?
Can you do my other sonnet?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
'Tis better to be vile than vile esteemed, when not to be receives reproach of being, and the just pleasure lost, which is so deemed, not by our feeling, but by others seeing. For why should others' false adulterate eyes give salutation to my sportive blood? Or on my frailties why are frailer spies, which in their wills count bad what I think good? No. I am that I am, and they that level at my abuses reckon up their own. I may be straight, though they themselves be bevel. By their rank thoughts my deeds must not be shown. Unless this general evil they maintain. All men are bad, and in their badness reign.
So what's that one about?
Basically it's talking about how you can't really avoid being evil or vile, because even if you're a good person, there are still people out there who are going to think that you are evil and that you do bad things, because they are bad as well, and everyone is bad, and you should just accept it and be bad.
This character to me, this sonnet reminds me of Iago, who's like, I don't care that I'm evil. I'm just gonna do it. And he loves it. And every villain in Shakespeare, what do we say that every villain in Shakespeare does?
Speaks to the
They
audience.
talk to the audience.
Until they come up with their plan.
Until they've come up with their plan,
And set their plan in motion.
and set it in motion, and then they stop talking to you. But Iago, if you've seen Othello, Iago talks to you. He's like, he says, there's a speech, let's see if I can bring it to mind. He says, he's just told Cassio, of course he'll get him back in good with some more. He's like, yeah, I'll get you back. I'll do that for you. And he's got this whole plan because he thinks he hates the Moor. He hates Othello. So Cassio goes and is like, thank you so much, Iago. And Iago turns and looks at the audience and he says, and what's he then that says I play a villain? When this advice is free I give, and honest, probable to thinking, and indeed the course to win the Moor again. For 'tis most easy the inclining Desdemona to subdue in any honest suit. She's framed as fruitful as the free elements, and for her to win the Moor, were it to renounce all seals and symbols of redeemed sin. And so he goes on and on. That's as much as I got. But he got, I did that a long time ago. But he loved it. But once he's set in motion, he stops talking to you. And once a villain has once he's killed a couple people, he just keeps killing. Because most of the time in Shakespeare's time, there's something called the chain of being. And if you disrupt it, if you, for example, if you kill a king, every character who kills a king, for example, Macbeth, is anybody doing Macbeth?
Later.
Later.
Learning one.
Macbeth kills the king. And once he does that, he knows he's going to hell. He knows it. He's done. So a lot of people die because he's got to cement his time on earth because he knows he's going straight to hell once he's done. So they just kill anybody in their wake. And it holds true in every play where somebody does it. If they kill a king or somebody above them in pecking order, they'll just keep killing. And because they know they've disrupted the chain of being. And most tragedies start that way. King Lear makes a very bad decision. He says, I want to be king, but I want to split my kingdom. And then he banishes a bunch of people, and the whole kingdom just tilts out of order until it gets restored by a bunch of people dying. Tragedies, they're the best. Anybody have another piece?
Do you want me to do Desdemona?
Oh, Desi.
Yeah, Desi.
There's a great play, and there's a group, probably, I say yes. There's a great play called The Complete Works of William Shakespeare Abridged, Revised. And it was created by 3 guys, and they do every Shakespeare play, and it's this big comedy. And you can bring them to your place, and it'd be so great if we could bring them up here. But it's a great play where they make fun of every Shakespeare play ever written. And in that play, they call her Desi, which is what I just did, because I was in that 2 summers ago. Okay. So who are you talking to?
Iago.
Oh! Iago, he's so good. So Othello has just been like, you're done.
Yeah.
We're done. And he leaves, and Iago's left there with Desdemona.
Oh, good Iago. What shall I do to win my lord again? Good friend, go to him, for by this light of heaven I know not how I lost him. Here I kneel. If e'er my will did trespass against his love, either in discourse of thought or actual deed, or that mine eyes, mine ears, or any sense delighted them in any form, or that I have not yet, and ever did, or ever will, though he shake me off to beggarly divorcement, love him dearly, comfort, forswear me. Unkindness may do much, and his unkindness may defeat my life, but never taint my love. I cannot say whore. It does abhor me now to speak the word, to do the act which might the addition earn, not the world's mass of vanity could make me.
Anybody else up there? What do you have left?
Let me not to the marriage
Oh,
of true minds.
yeah.
Okay. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved.
So that one is done at a lot of weddings. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediment. Yeah. Great. So there's another speech in your packet. Do you know what to be or not to be? Do you see
That
it?
is the question.
Yeah. I think it's in your, and it's in the folio handwriting, and I just so that you can see. If you follow along with it, you'll see how the language can go. Is everybody there? Okay, so we're gonna go through to be or not to be. So you can see the punctuation. This is gonna be a problem to everybody. Yeah, it starts. Yeah. To be or not to be. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go through it and just see how all this stuff tells me what to do. And you'll see that stuff is spelled weird. Sometimes you think an S is an F or all these things. It's difficult to read. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing envy, to die, to sleep, no more. And by a sleep, to say we end the heartache, and 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to? 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the poor man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes when he himself might his quieties make with a bare bodkin? Who would these fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus, conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment with this regard, their currents turn away and lose the name of action. Yeah. So you can see how that has a bunch of punctuation. I was trying to do it on the fly. There's those capital letters, there's all that stuff that is telling the actor what to do. Do you have any questions or thoughts? Does anybody know a sonnet that they'd like to do for us? Kayla? Sure? Sarah? Do you have any questions for anybody up here or thoughts? I think the thing I would just say is that once you get under the first layer, it makes so much sense. And once you start to see the theme of all these plays, and all these sonnets, time, death, all this stuff, it uses the same conceit in play after play after play. And when you start to see them, you're like, oh wait, that's in that play. That's the same thing in that play. Oh, that's what that sonnet is about. It overlaps and starts to make much more sense once you start to dig under the surface.
Did any of you, when you were studying your original sonnet and then transcribing the words in the lexicons, were any of you surprised that the word meant something you didn't even think it meant at all?
Oh, yes.
Do you have any examples of those?
Yup.
Your Hercules one?
Yes.
Not it.
So like in the one from Titus Andronicus, when I was looking everything up, I was really surprised. The first one was, she talks about how she's going to be tied into the body of a dismal ewe. And a dismal ewe is actually like a really scrawny tree. Like yew means tree, and I thought
Yew is
I
a
was thinking-
Is a
species of tree.
yeah.
There's an actual tree that's a yew.
Well, I grew up on a farm, guys. Like I think a ewe is a sheep.
Oh, I didn't know it was a sheep.
And then, like in that same soliloquy as well, when she's talking about urchins, urchins are actually hedgehogs. Funny, huh? Like,
Yeah, I can see that one.
It's like a land urchin.
A land
Yeah.
urchin.
yeah.
Yeah, there's so many words that don't mean the same thing, and you know, there's a push. Some people, there's a theater somewhere in this country that does Shakespeare, I think, but it's a major theater. It's either like in Oregon, or it's a famous one.
It's
They're-
Oregon.
It's Oregon, right? It's Ashland Shakespeare.
Yeah, I think so.
And they actually are in process of rewriting some of this stuff so people can understand it.
My son has made Macbeth, taken it and made it Macbeth, so he does the Star Wars theme with his kids. Lots of lightsaber.
Yeah.
Many people dying everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So there's a push to, you know, and it's interesting. There's a woman who's been researching the handwriting of the time, and she discovered just like maybe within the past couple months that we were thinking that this specific handwriting that they used to the kind of handwriting was called secretarial or something, that it was that we've been reading it wrong. And it's like 400 years later, we just discovered that. And so it's changing some of the lines in the folio because we've been reading this letter as a different letter. And so all these folios are going to get re-edited. And it was just discovered. And I think it's pretty amazing. We just keep finding out new stuff these many years later.
What was it?
I wish I could think of it. I've had the longest day. I cannot think of it. I can't bring it to mind. Maybe I'll send it out in an email or something.
All those S's.
Yeah, there's, you know,
Yeah.
it's a confusing when you first look at it. But they've made this book, which is the first folio, but in modern type. So you can now read it much easier than, so there's no confusion if it's an S or an F or an N or an R. And so you can buy this as well. So if you don't want to do as much homework, you can get this one. It's pretty. It's got 3. I'm sorry. Anything else?
So compared to some of the other plays you've done, how do you like Shakespeare? What would you rather do?
It's fun when you're good at it,
Yeah.
but when you first start, it's
It's really hard to break into it, especially sometimes in a play, you can look for further meaning of what your character is talking about, but in Shakespeare you have to do that immediately. And I was horrible at it at first, but now that I have like the skills and tools that I need, I really, really enjoy it. So, yeah.
When I was growing up, the only Shakespeare I was ever introduced to was Romeo and Juliet, and I got tired of it real fast. And it made me really just dislike Shakespeare. And then last year, one of my professors made me do Shakespeare, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And I started to really actually, once I dug into it a little bit, started to really like it. So when he was offering this class, I'm like, yeah, I totally want to do this. And I've never been in a Shakespeare play, and I want to be in a Shakespeare play so bad now.
Yeah. I think like I was in A Midsummer Night's Dream in high school, but I was Hippolyta, who plays the queen in the play. So it was more of a minor role. But I think from like having that experience in high school to now having similar like Ben, we had a professor who, the two of us, we had to do lots of Shakespeare, Old English stuff together all the time. So we got to be super close friends because of that. But now taking this class and like seeing how in depth you have to go, it makes me appreciate Shakespeare's plays and like Old English plays a lot more because you have to do so much investment that when you come to a modern day play, it makes you realize that you should be investing more into it and doing more research than you actually are.
Yeah, I think also when you're introduced to it in high school, you really, at least for me, I was that person that was like, okay, I'm reading this because I have to. I have no idea what's going on. It's okay. But like, now I don't think that I would ever read Shakespeare like that. So it's definitely, like Susan said, it's really helped me appreciate it. So, yeah.
There's nothing like it, really. There's nothing like it. There's a reason it just keeps going and going and going. Once you can just pick up the folio and just read it, you can point to any page. Once you've hit that place, you just want to do all of those speeches because they're so full, they're so rich, they're so beautiful. They're full of images and. I mean, that line, I want no eyes, I stumbled when I saw, I want to say that on stage when I'm 50 and playing Gloucester, right? I want to say it. There's so many, I mean, people wait for Hamlet to say to be or not to be. They're desperate to hear it. So there's nothing like it. And the thing is for actors, when you start it, it heightens all your bad habits. Not only does it heighten everything, it heightens all of it. So any weird stuff you're doing as an actor, boy, does it stand out 3 times worse when you start speaking in verse in Shakespeare. And that is the frustrating thing about it. But but that's why I say, and when we started the class, I was like, if we can act Shakespeare, you can act anything. Because it's the most challenging. You have to use so much. You have to use so much of your brain, so much of your imagination, so much of your heart, your soul. Because in Shakespeare's time, in Elizabethan England, they believed their soul mattered. Big time. And Romeo, that's a tragedy, right? The tragedy of Romeo and Juliet. If he jumps that wall to go kiss Juliet, the reality is that he dies for it. And that's what you say in a tragedy in Shakespeare. It's big. It's not small. We were just talking before we came over. I was like, so where are you? And Ben said, well, I'm outside her house. I was like, no, you're not. You're outside this castle, right? It is compound where the Capulets live. And she's in this. And you're perched on the wall. And if you jump over and they find you, you're dead. It's that big, right? So when we do Shakespeare, everything has to live. It matters more. Their soul matters. If they kill a king, it is not good. I mean, it just all of it matters more. We talk about the 7 deadly sins, the 7 cardinal virtues, right? Those opposites. They're all over Shakespeare.
I was going to say you had to start with tomorrow. And I'm so glad you did because that soliloquy, that speech has so much impact in it.
Yeah. So Macbeth and one of his last soliloquies is the famous one, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. We all know this. You want to say it together?
Sure.
In unison?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Yeah, so that's how we started. To just break into the language, right? And we did so many exercises with that piece to just break it down. But he says that at the end of the play, because he has been told by witches, just so you know, if a witch appears in a play, it's the devil on earth, and you should go the other way. But Macbeth is like, what? Tell me. But when witches appear in a play in Shakespeare's time, if the Elizabethan audience is watching and witches showed up, they were like, oh no. They're like, that's not good. And then when Macbeth talks to them, they all know he's damned. Right then. And because he shouldn't do it. He should not talk to them. But he does. And they tell him he's going to be king. And he can't get it out of his head. And they say, you won't be king. You won't be king if Burnham Wood comes to Dunsinane. Burnham Wood is the name of the forest that's outside the castle. If Burnham Wood comes to Dunsinane, the castle, he's like, well, a forest can't move. But you know what Shakespeare does? Do you know the end of this play? So the army marching on his castle they've got like bushes in front of them and trees, and so the whole forest is moving. And he's like, are you kidding me? And he speaks this speech. He's like, he's just like, it's over. He knows he's about to die and lose his kingship. And you know that his head gets cut off in this play, and it gets brought on stage, bleeding. So good. And that's how order is restored. It's fascinating. But there's a lot of these good, juicy things that we don't necessarily get to see or talk about. One of the things I talk to the actors about, I'm like, just say what you see. Don't think we should have him on a pedestal. Is he talking about sex in this sonnet? We're like, yeah. Okay, well then, that's what we're talking about. Are we talking about death and murder? Yep. So we have to go there, right? We try to elevate it and try not to actually see what's right in front of us. Sometimes a student will look at a sonnet and go, this is about a spaceship, landing somewhere. I'm like, no, it's about love, right? It's about love. But we think we've got a perception that is blinding us. I want no eyes, I stumbled when I saw. It's blinding us, right? Because we have whatever we picked up along the way, whatever perception we had when we were young, or if we never had any interaction with it at all. Once we get all that clear, we can actually see it. And it's pretty cool.
I have a question about when Shakespeare should be taught to.
Yeah.
I've heard the opinion that children should really, or young students should not be exposed really to amateur production, but should see kind of the real profession.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It is, if you see bad Shakespeare, you've all probably seen bad Shakespeare. I have, right? You're like, what is going on?
Today, though.
Not today, she said. Not today. Right? It's hard to do, and if it's done poorly, if you the thing is you can't, unless you've got professional actors who've done it a long time, you can't put a play up of Shakespeare in 4 or 5 weeks. Right? If we were going to do a Shakespeare play, I would put these kids in a class and we would study it for a full semester and then do it the next one. Mm-hmm. It would be 7 months of study because it's so complex. And especially if you don't have a group of people who's done them and done them and done them, the more you do them, you're like, oh, this is in that play, that's in that play, oh, that's piece of cake, I got it, right? But yeah, it's exposing us to bad Shakespeare or people teaching it who don't know what they're doing.
Right, you don't love it.
And don't love it. Like, you could probably tell that I am insane about it. Like, I'll just break into songs sometimes in class. I love Shakespeare, and I'll just run in. I get so crazy about it. You have to have somebody who's like, who just loves. My approach is the acting of it, right? I've got some of the scholar stuff, but it's about the acting of it. And the storytelling that it is.
We are blessed with Ontario being not too far from us to be able to go to Stratford.
Yes.
And they do excellent Shakespeare.
Yeah,
So.
I can't wait. I've been here like 6 months, so maybe I'll go over there. Just
Stratford, Ontario.
Yeah.
Did you ever go to Spring Green?
Oh yes. Yes, APT.
My daughter just gave us tickets to the Merry Wives of Windsor last summer, and it was really excellent.
Spring Green, Wisconsin is A, gorgeous.
Yeah.
B, the American Players Theater, APT. They do a Shakespeare season, they do it in rep, and they are amazing at it. Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, I went to As You Like It across the river at the Galaxy. They show the London National Theatre.
Yes,
live.
National Theatre
And
Live.
that.
Yes. I would love to get that. I just sent them an email to show it at Lakes, to show it in our auditorium.
Oh,
I would love to do
wonderful.
those. I'd love those events to be shown in our
Yeah.
theater,
Oh my
because that would
gosh.
be so
Yes.
amazing. I just don't know how to make it happen. But I sent them an email.
That'd be great.
But so we don't have to go across the river. We could maybe do it right here at Lake State
Oh, that'd
in that
be
huge
wonderful.
theater.
I saw Derek Jacobi over there do Lear, and just stark stage.
Yep.
Almost nothing on stage but the people. It was perfect.
Yeah, some people say, and I think they're right, you probably agree after you saw that pretty much 50% of the job is to say it clearly and out loud, because the plays are so good, right? You just have to be able to say it and speak it well, and then 50% of your job's done for you. But Derek Jacobi has played Hamlet, he's played Lear, he's done it all. And you've probably seen him in movies. What movies has Derek Jacobi been in?
He just
I
did
love
Last Tango in Halifax.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that?
I haven't seen
Yes,
it.
It's a series. It's fabulous.
Yeah, Judi Dench, you all probably know her.
Yes.
She's been in those. I can't think of what you might have seen Derek
James.
Jacobi
Oh
in.
wait, no. I thought you were saying talking about Judi Dench.
But Judi Dench is another famous Shakespearean actor that flops.
007.
Yes, exactly. That's why most people, and Derek Jacobi's done very similar things, but I can't think of, he's just one of the most famous Shakespearean actors ever. Directed Kenneth Branagh, his first time, you know Kenneth Branagh? He directed Kenneth's first Hamlet.
Did you see him in Henry V?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God! I watched that and it was fabulous.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you can see Mark Rylance, who just won an Oscar.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Mark Rylance played Henry V,
Oh,
and it is good.
Violence is awesome.
Rylance speaks Shakespeare like I haven't heard it. He's clearly he's really good. He's really good.
Wolf Hall. Oh my God. Wolf Hall.
I love it. Yeah, he's very
Read it first. You know,
Yeah.
read it first and then.
We're
see.
waiting for the second book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bring up the bodies.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye, Sarah. Thanks. Anything else? Well done, guys. Nice job.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Great insights.